What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Reformed Reader, the channel where we review books, movies, TV shows, really any forms of media through the lens of a Christian who is under the authority of the scriptures. And today I want to talk about Soul Cage by Luke Schulz. Now, just as a precursor, I was sent a copy of this early to review, but it was an e-arc, but I liked it so much that I purchased it. That'll probably, I mean, if that's all you need to know, then you can stop the video here, I guess. But let's talk about what's this book about. I want to read the back for us. It says, murder breeds magic. So all power comes with a price. In a world where magic is transferred by the act of killing another, Mydron stands above the rest. Having accidentally killed the most powerful mage in all of existence, Mydron now lives a peaceful life in isolation. But there is no such thing as peace in the land of Otor. War calls. The voices of the dead haunt him, and there is nowhere to hide. Cursed with the deathly taint of magic, young Will must seek acceptance among the knights of Aeon. There he must learn to touch the other side, control his abilities, and decide for himself what is right and what is wrong. Tavora's soul is broken. The price of vengeance was her sanity. Her companions help her keep a tenuous grasp on herself, but with the urgent need to absorb enough magic to sustain them, she is pushed to choose a side in the upcoming war. The question remains, will she choose the right one? So normally in my reviews, I go over the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so today, what we're going to do is we're going to go over the good first. So let's talk about what I liked about this book. The characters were awesome. Each character was unique. There's like the synopsis on the back reads, it's really follows three different perspectives. One being someone who found himself in a position where he has attained and become the most powerful mage by killing the most powerful at the time. And so all of that power went to him. And then we follow Will. I believe Will, it seems like maybe he has some autism going on or something like that. There's definitely some leanings here that Luke takes with Will. He's sort of a pariah when it comes to the society that he's in. He's kind of, I mean, he's outcast, thinks differently, like the way that he thinks is just different than everybody else's. And he's trying to figure out how he can learn and not just learn, but gain these abilities to become powerful, to help defend the realm. And then we see Tavora. And Tavora is a character whose soul has been broken. And so what ends up happening is these characters will, in battle, might kill another one, and then they inherit the powers from that individual. It's very Highlander-esque, if you know what I'm talking about. So they attain the power that was held within that individual. And now you'd think, okay, that leads to some pretty cool battle scenes and stuff, which it does. But what's neat is that this is a society that has been built off of this power struggle. So what they do is they have these men who have attained this amalgamation of power within them, and they will actually pass it down to the next generation. And the way they do that is through a ceremony of rites, and they will bring the new recruits in, and they basically will be paired with somebody that is a veteran, and they are tasked with killing this person. And so the veteran gives his life up in order that the young person may attain the power so that he can continue to defend their realm. But the problem there is that if someone gains too much power, the souls of the individuals that are contained within them, if they become too loud, and they may overtake them, and they become almost like superhuman magic zombies. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. And so that's Tavora, is that not only has her soul been broken, but she is somehow still able to maintain her sanity. And those are our three characters. Let's talk about the plot. The plot, to me, is awesome. The plot is, it's not, like I said, it's not extremely unique in and of itself, but I don't really think that you're going to find that just about anywhere. But it doesn't fall into like your standard tropes or anything like that. It's like he has taken this idea of this transfer of power and flipped it on its head. So that's really neat. But like the back said, the story starts out with the character Mydrin, who has accidentally killed the most powerful mage. And so there was a huge battle going on. Again, I don't think this is too spoilery because it's in like the first couple of chapters, but there's this huge battle going on, and he's trying to protect, I think he's a priest or something. He's trying to protect children in this church while it's being ransacked by this evil horde. And something happens, and he ends up accidentally killing this guy. And so then he inherits all this power, and he becomes the strongest person. And he decides really not to fight at all. He's like, I don't want anything to do with this. He's much more of a pacifist. And so the forces of good and evil are trying to reel him back in onto their side. So that's a really, really neat aspect that we're going through. The pacing. This book is super fast paced. This is one of those where I was flying through it, and I was like, okay, one chapter right after the next. So the pacing is great. The world building is really cool. The kingdom is really neat, especially when they start exploring sort of the underground section. And for anyone that's read this, you know what I'm talking about. But it's really, really interesting. The prose is pretty simple. It's not simple, not in a bad way. Simple. It's what I like. I don't really. It's not my preference to fight with a book, to have to, really decipher each word or have to look things up over and over. So it's a pretty fast paced. I would probably compare it to like a Dresden Files, maybe a little more complex than that. The writing style is actually, I would say probably a little more advanced than that, but it reads quickly like that. So that's the good. Let's talk about the bad. There's really not a lot here. There's not a lot that I didn't like. The only hang up that I had with this, and when I reviewed this, I initially gave it like 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, because I really wanted to leave Luke a good review, but I also wanted to be extremely objective. I don't want to be dishonest with my review, especially since he sent me a copy, but I understand that it's like, hey, he's trying to get the word out. And so at first I gave it 4 stars, and I think I gave it like an 8 out of 10 or something like that. And the reason is because at first I was like, well, there's a few typos. Well, this is self-published. So, you do have to you do want to take that in consideration, but it doesn't read like a self-published book. But with that being said, the thing that kind of held me back as far as like giving it 10 out of 10 or 5 stars is that there were some analogies used and some phrases and comparisons and things that we use here, and it kind of pulled me out of the story a few times. I can't remember exactly which ones they were because it happened a few times, and it's nothing, it's nothing detrimental to the story or anything like that, but it did pull me out of it a little bit because I'm sitting there, I'm kind of like, well, does that even exist in this world? Or so it very well could be. Most of the time when you read books like this, people, they get way too invested in it, and they're like, well, how do they know English or whatever? And it's like, well, you're reading the story that has been translated into our language for us to consume. It's basically how all the authors have explained that away. And that's the case here. But like I said, there was a few of those comparisons and analogies that he used or turns of phrase that I'm like, that doesn't seem like it would make any sense in this world. So it did pull me out of it. So when I first read it, I gave it, I think I gave it 8 out of 10 or something like that. But then over time, because like I said, I'm recording this in December, almost January of 25. And I read this back in late April. So it's been a little while, but the more I've been away from it, the more I find myself thinking about it later on. And so I actually revised my review just a couple of months ago because the magic system and the world building and the characters and the plot, like it has really stuck with me in a way that I didn't think that it would. So much so that when book 2 comes out, it'll be a like day 1 read for me. So there's really not a lot bad here. And if you go and you look at my review on Goodreads or Instagram or whatever, I've actually revised it and I've bumped it up because of how good I thought this was. All right. So we went over the good, we went over the bad. Now let's talk about the ugly. What kind of sin is steeped into this book? Murder, obviously. I mean, it is a driving plot point. Is the murder of one character of another. It's a struggle for power. It is violent. It is a brutal world. I wouldn't say it's grimdark, but I would say it's like grimdark light, kind of. If I was to sell this to you or pitch this to you, I would say it's imagine Highlander meets a mild grimdark world and Stormlight Archive is kind of all meshed together. That's kind of how it played out in my mind. And if that sounds like it's up your alley, then it probably is. There's tons of battles, there's tons of fight scenes, but like I said, it's pretty brutal. I think there's a little bit of language here. Nothing that you wouldn't see on like a syndicated television show. To me, there's really not a lot for me to speak out against. This leads me to my last question, which is, should Christians read this book? And really, it just depends. Again, it depends on your convictions, on the severity of those convictions. If you have an aversion to reading about big battle scenes and war and one person killing another, or there being, like murderous plots and things like that, this is not the book for you. But if you're looking for like a fast paced, kind of brutal storyline with some intense, kind of grim magic systems, this is the perfect read. So it depends. If you have an aversion to that kind of thing, I would say, stay away from it. But if you like the Stormlight Archive or really any of Brandon Sanderson's works, some of James Islington's stuff, this really feels a lot like Shadow of What Was Lost, but maybe a little more brutal, but not by much. I would say pick this up. It is so good and so worth your time. It's not a long book. It's it's like 400 pages, and the font is pretty big. So this is a quick read. I think I read this in just a few days. It is really good, and it makes you actually want to keep picking it up and reading it. But I mean, look at that cover. That cover is sick. So when book 2 comes out, it will be a day one read for me. And then lastly, what was I listening to when I was reading this? I will leave that in the description below. If you pick this up and you're like, I really kind of want something ambient, really anything that is Ambient Worlds is a fantastic channel that you can go to, and you can kind of pick through those. Bardify, Bardify. Again, it's in the description below. Those are 2 great recommendations I have for what you might want to listen to while you're reading if you want to get that immersive effect. So yeah, Soul Cage by Luke Schulz. I thought it was a great book. If that sounds interesting to you, pick it up. And if nothing else, I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you on the next one.